This leads me to the core of my talk, which is education and 21st century skills. Quality education is a necessary component for the foundation of a successful society, without any doubt. Almost every country that has transformed into a strong economic power started with reform of its educational system. Education is a major part of the solution for many interconnected problems that the world faces today. It is certainly a major factor that addresses the solution to many of the problems in the MENA region that it is now facing, especially with the youth bulge that is the highest globally, with 2/3 under the age of 35. Despite the fact that the MENA region has 60% of the world's oil reserves and 45% of the world's natural gas reserves, and although some MENA countries have invested more in education, it has not led to higher levels of employment. And youth unemployment is currently over 25%, which is the highest globally of any single region in the globe. So thank you, Hans. Thank you, Mark. It's a pleasure to be here again. I've been with ICD since 2013, and it's a pleasure ever since then to attend advisory board meetings, as well as attend events like that, especially with a mix not only of politicians, but more importantly, students that I very much relate to. My whole life has been working with them, dealing with them, and working with them, actually, because they have been a source of inspiration for me in so many ways. Before I start my talk, thank you for your presentation. I think I have to say a few words about Dr. Barghouti's presentation. I recall when I was doing my PhD in the UK back in the late 70s was my bachelor, but I recall that, do you remember when Falkland Islands took over for a few days, I guess, by Argentinians? The whole British military was mobilized, the whole world was mobilized. Falkland Islands is just empty islands. There's a few cows in it, a few sheep. There's nothing of value, no gas, no. And here we talk about Palestine, a whole country that is lost. And okay, so there are UN committees that on paper reserves their rights to return, but there are generations, 75 years, generations that are still, and leaders get Nobel Prizes, they get I don't know what, for peace, Nobel Prize for peace, and there's no peace. So, and regarding our Indian colleague, he mentioned something about school, about children getting indoctrinated. I am going to have to show you some videos of what they teach them in some of the Israeli schools at very young age.
No, I'm aware.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking it is like a recurring thing when once...
Absolutely, yeah.
On the other side, and it goes on.
No. Crime doesn't justify crime, but this is nothing compared to what's happening. So my talk is on, as was mentioned, political transcendence through soft diplomacy education. So my passion is in education and higher education. I've been working in that area for almost 35 years. And I was lucky enough to be a minister of, technocrat minister of education, higher education for 3 years almost, which allowed us to do many things in the higher education sector in Lebanon that led us to be very well ranked by the end of 2013. I don't know if you're aware of the Education World Forum that is held once a year, and they produce a report that ranks all countries in higher education, and many other factors. So I'll just mention one ranking of Lebanon in as far as the ranking in the quality of teaching science and math in universities in Lebanon. We ranked number 4 out of 144 by the end of 2013. I don't know what it is now, but that's end of 2013. We were preceded by Singapore, I think Finland, and Belgium, if I'm not mistaken. So I think education is at the core of everything, and I'll be mentioning that. So I'm going to start by saying that with the increasing complexity of political systems across the globe, there is dire need for soft diplomacy in the 21st century. In an effective tool for political transcendence which can tip the scale between peace and war, as controversy between nations or groups address difficult questions that need to be resolved, such as the question we were talking about a minute ago. Soft diplomacy resolves conflicts in a spirit of reconciliation, keeping in mind the interests of others. So at a time when military strength should pair with moral restraint, military power may win battles, but soft diplomacy help evade wars. History proved that coercive global leadership has failed and that hegemony was an anomaly. The world is experiencing a stage of uncertainty in light of the fall of the hegemony system and global polarization. Major problems of the 21st century cannot be solved by a polarized military force, but requires multilateral cooperation with nations that have adopted different political systems. So we are witnessing the birth of a global century in which every nation, through soft diplomacy, is dedicated to solving the problems that threaten us all. This may be accomplished through education, which is central to many solutions in our changing world at the national and regional levels. The need to design educational systems that breed leaders is now paramount. Leaders that have an attitude of compromise, interaction, and tolerance. Leaders that employ dialogue to enable reform and reconciliation, as well as overcome bottlenecks. That is why it is essential that curricular reform in educational system equips students with the needed breadth and depth of knowledge and skills, and would enable learners to work, live, and contribute in a highly competitive and controversial global society. Indeed, the goals of cultural diplomacy can be achieved through curricular and extracurricular activities. To ensure that the educational process continues to develop and achieve its objectives, teaching tools and methods should utilize a well-defined set of criteria that are regularly evaluated and assessed, as these represent the operational contexts through which the concepts of cultural diplomacy can be experimented with, then disseminated. As for global leadership, few are the nations that learn lessons from history. Rather, most of them miss opportunities that help them avoid repeating the same mistakes, sometimes with disastrous impact on their societies. And we see that in the Middle East as well. Such is the case of coercive global leadership, which has failed throughout history. The approach of global powers to foreign policy should be to shy away from coercion and move toward peaceful forms of international engagement, including soft diplomacy. The United States power peaked after the Soviet Union's collapse in the early 90s. In 1992, the G7 countries controlled 68% of global GDP and maintained sophisticated militaries which, as the Gulf War seemed to demonstrate, could achieve their objectives quickly, cheaply, and with minimal loss of Western life. But this is no longer the case. By 2020, the G7's GDP had dwindled to 31% of the global total and is expected to fall to 29% by 2024. This trend is likely to continue, and if the past 30 years of war have demonstrated anything, it is that sophisticated militaries do not always achieve their intended political objectives. Clearly, hegemony was an anomaly, an accident of history unlikely to repeat, at least in the foreseeable future. Over history, superpowers have attempted to control countries across the globe for various reasons. The only way these countries were able to resist such interference was through internal national unity. More often than not, superpowers would exploit weaknesses in these countries to control them by implementing the policy of divide and conquer. For example, the social mosaic and rich sectarian, religious, and ethnic makeup of Lebanon, as well as its lack of national unity on major issues, would be exploited by external powers in this way. Mobilizing the instincts of sectarianism has only proven to be detrimental to people, and the mixture of religion and politics has always been volatile. Needless to say, the situation in Lebanon is unique in the world. where the pains of the birth of the nation are still ongoing after 100 years from declaring the state of Greater Lebanon back in 1920, which later became the Lebanese Republic against the background of mainly religious-based political entities. The whole world is experiencing what scholars of philosophy, history, and sociology can call the stage of uncertainty. What is evident is the collapse of the hegemony system, as the major problems of the 21st century cannot be solved by a polarized global system. As attempts to control the world through force failed, the task for the next century will be to create a global century in which every nation, through soft diplomacy, is dedicated to solving the problems that threaten us all. Global consequences of polarization, which shapes economic, defense, and foreign policies, among others, have been detrimental as some political leaders learned to capitalize on polarization, which negatively impacted many sensitive areas in the world. This, in turn, enabled the manifestation of a hidden culture that cancels rather than understands the other. We have repeatedly heard political leaders say, "You're either with us or against us." Whereas what is needed is an attitude of compromise, interaction, and tolerance, as well as an honest self-reflection and open dialogue to enable reform and reconciliation, as well as overcome bottlenecks. Needless to say, polarized societies make democracies vulnerable politically, and societal polarization in different contexts around the world has detrimental consequences on democracy that may lead to gridlock and democratic erosion, as is the current case of Lebanon. Polarization threatens both governability and social cohesion, as well as support for democracy in advanced and developing democracies alike. Compared with the 20th century Cold War, where the main fault lines were based on the left-right ideological spectrum, the issues dividing people today are more variable and less easily captured by conventional distinctions. Common patterns of political mobilization in severely polarized countries produce similar intergroup conflict dynamics across very different contexts that threatens to undermine social cohesion and political stability. Situations of deep polarization create problems of governance as communication and trust break down, and the two camps prove unwilling to and unable to negotiate and compromise. Regarding cultural diplomacy, of course, you all know, probably this is your topic, Dr. Milton Cummings, the American political scientist and author, defines cultural diplomacy as the exchange of ideas, information, values, systems, traditions, beliefs, and other aspects of culture with the intention of fostering mutual understanding. In light of the numerous societies, cultures, sects, religions, faiths, convictions, and ethnicities at the global or even regional level, cultural diplomacy can act as an effective platform to promote dialogue and mutual understanding, to reach a place where partnership can be realized to allow exchange of concepts and opinions in order to reach common understanding and consensus in addressing and accepting differences. Cultural diplomacy provides a bridge that allows different views to merge in different ways, not only at the personal level, but also at the national and multinational levels. This can be done by identifying common values, ideas, or ideals that can be shared. The social mosaic of many societies, such as the Lebanese, can contribute to merge values to reach a common understanding, thus breaking the barriers of fear from the other and leading to trust, cooperation, and partnership. Indeed, on his visit to Lebanon, the only Arab country where Christians and Muslims jointly govern, Pope John Paul II in July 2015, and I'm quoting, said, "Lebanon is more than a country, it is a message to the world," unquote. The message the late Pope was preaching is that of diversity, coexistence, peace, and reconciliation among people of different religious, political, and cultural beliefs. To appreciate cultural diplomacy, a society needs to create generations capable of critical thinking in an attempt to use soft diplomacy for political transcendence. It is no longer acceptable to be told by many political parties that have frozen in history what to believe. It is high time for people to arrive at their own beliefs as a result of critiquing the facts. Instead of using diversity to divide people, it should be used to promote internal strength. One way to achieve this is for nations to make wise choices during municipality, parliamentary, and presidential elections, which would generate governments that will end corrupt political practices and systems, prohibit the use of money to buy elections, and there are many places where this is happening, change unfair tax systems where billionaires pay close to nothing, as well as provide the people with what is essentially their human rights, not privileges, such as clean water, food, healthcare, education, and so many other things. So hard power overcomes or coerces through military might, while soft power is the ability to persuade through culture, values, and ideas. Cultural diplomacy today is a unique and innovative field of research that has successfully established itself as a standalone system. In my opinion, it is not true what many say and believe, that might is right. On the contrary, in my opinion, right is might. Hard power, being the power to coerce, cannot replace soft power, which is the power to attract. Over the past decades, it has become clear that the might of leading powers in terms of military superiority did not correlate to addressing the main conflicts across the world with durable solutions, particularly the conflict of the Middle East, an almost 80-year-old unresolved conflict. 80 years. In contrast, the leaders' use of soft power entails creating a vision, communicating it, attracting and choosing able people, delegating, and forming coalitions. Accordingly, soft power, a principle of daily democratic politics, depends on the capability to shape the preferences of others and getting them to aspire for the results that you want. Soft power is more than just persuasion or the ability to convince people by argument. It is also the ability to attract by sharing values. Soft power may be related to the co-optive end of the behavior system, whereas the hard power is usually associated with command behavior. Cultural diplomacy has a significant role in promoting soft power. Given the above, cultural diplomacy is critical to fostering reconciliation and stability in an increasingly globalized and dynamic world, especially with the proliferation of mass information and communication technologies that have ensured greater access to the public than ever before. Educating the nations in cultural diplomacy possesses the unique ability to influence international public attitude and ideology of individuals, groups, cultures, or states, thus accelerating the realization of cultural diversity, global intercultural interchange, justice and interdependence, human rights, and global peace. To achieve this feat, some have proposed turning to information technology as a democratizing factor within the hands of the masses, providing them with access to information once inaccessible to them. So a pertinent aspect of my presentation addresses the relevance of information revolution and the impact of technology. And the conditions of projecting soft power have transformed dramatically in recent years. As the information revolution and globalization are transforming and shrinking the world, as well as creating virtual communities and networks that cut across national borders. Transnational organizations and NGOs will play larger roles, and many of those organizations will have soft power of their own as they attract citizens into coalitions that cut across national boundaries. Political leadership becomes, in part, a competition for attractiveness, legitimacy, and credibility. The ability to share information and be understood becomes an important source of attraction and power. This political game in a global information age suggests that the relative role of soft power to hard power will likely increase. Information is power, and today a much larger part of the world's population has access to that power. Technological advances have led to dramatic reduction in the cost of processing and transmitting information. When people are overwhelmed with the volume of information confronting them, it is hard to know what to focus on, especially when you are dealing, more often than not, with fake and misleading information. We have a lot of that in Lebanon and the Middle East. Attention rather than information becomes the scarce resource, and those who can analyze and distinguish valuable information from the background clutter gain power. Technologically fueled disruption of the media industry, especially the rise of social media, has helped amplify the effects of polarization. Moreover, the increasing frequency of hate speech with the expansion of social networks is one of the most dangerous social phenomena in modern era, which led to worrying trends of rising xenophobia, racism, and intolerance, threatening democratic values, peace, social stability, as well as freedom of expression. The technological revolution that is taking place is increasingly desperate for attention. Previous means of communication, such as traditional newspapers, magazines, television, radio, are dead or dying. This further raises the question about whether there is a thing as free speech that crosses today's social, religious, political, and ethnic divides. Have societies managed to communicate to youth how to sift the information within their reach? I would say no. Have societies produced sovereign individuals that take responsibility for their actions that in turn affect our communities and the whole world? Have they been taught to have the courage to make ethical choices and to confront the potential of future chaos? The youth are the agents that transform the potential of being into reality, and it is our duty to disseminate to them the skills and know-how that help them make the world a better place. How do we do that? Revamped higher education is the key. On the other hand, smart technology and software will disrupt most traditional industries in the next decade. You all know, for example, Uber is just a software tool. They don't own any cars, yet they are the biggest taxi company in the world. Airbnb is now the biggest hotel company in the world. They don't own any property. AI by 2030 will allow computers to become more intelligent than humans. Watson already helps diagnose cancer 4 times more accurate than humans. And Facebook now has a pattern recognition software that can recognize faces better than humans. So this leads me to the core of my talk, which is education and 21st century skills. Quality education is a necessary component for the foundation of a successful society, without any doubt. Almost every country that has transformed into a strong economic power started with reform of its educational system. Education is a major part of the solution for many interconnected problems that the world faces today. It is certainly a major factor that addresses the solution to many of the problems in the MENA region it is now facing, especially with the youth bulge that is the highest globally, with 2/3 under the age of 35. Despite the fact that the MENA region has 60% of the world's oil reserves and 45% of the world's natural gas reserves, and although some MENA countries have invested more in education, it has not led to higher levels of employment. And youth unemployment is currently over 25%, which is the highest globally of any single region in the globe. Needless to say, high unemployment rates and other related regional problems necessitate the investigation of the education skills that learners are currently taught. Over the past decade, there has been increasing awareness for the need to advance the global agenda for education in terms of a well-defined, skill-based approach that fully addresses future global education challenges. This should clearly define the needed elements of education and the specific skills that must be acquired to advance education in the 21st century. The required elements of education include teacher, learner, and subject matter, needless to say. Educational institutions should focus on the teacher in terms of training and professional development, on the learner in terms of activities delivered inside and outside class, and on subject matter in terms of curricula, books, e-content, as well as digital and non-digital resources. Equally important, of course, is educational management, which plays a pivotal role in shaping these elements to reach the desired objectives and has a crucial role in the planning, implementation, and provision of efficient supporting programs, projects, and activities. On the other hand, the skills required to advance education in an increasingly connected multicultural world include those of cultural diplomacy. Using skills of cultural diplomacy to improve collaboration and address global education challenges poses a potential solution to some of these challenges and may empower educators to support international education policy development while remaining sensitive to local and regional education needs. Diplomacy requires the presentation of non-confrontational skills of mediation and negotiation in order to reach a common goal. This, in turn, requires communication skills as well as knowledge of the subject matter. Moreover, diplomacy is an interdisciplinary undertaking as it integrates skills and knowledge from various disciplines. Accordingly, the incorporation of diplomacy in education must draw on the disciplines of human rights, international relations, cultural anthropology, communications, international education, and development. Weaving cultural diplomacy into the internationalization of education will become more relevant and necessary as we move toward the goal of graduating international citizens that balance depth in the subject matter with breadth of knowledge and skills necessary for the generation of good citizens that create successful societies fare well in international markets. Developing a cultural tolerance in higher education institutes, or HEIs, is an instrument for combating inequalities and allowing students to succeed through their natural potentials without exclusion due to superfluous interventions. One of the major challenges facing HEIs is preparing students for lifelong learning and society's 21st century need for civic-minded individuals who have the intellectual and personal capabilities to constructively engage political, ethnic, and religious differences, work effectively, and live together with different kinds of people in a global society. To achieve the above, HEIs should promote three essential core capacities: a personal epistemology that reflects a sophisticated understanding of knowledge and beliefs and ways of thinking; empathy, the capacity to understand the mental states of others; and an integrated identity that includes values, commitments, as well as sense of civic and social responsibility. It is argued that to foster the development of these capabilities, HEIs must recommit to providing a formative liberal education and adopt a developmental model of undergraduate education as a process of intellectual and personal growth. And I have contributed in establishing or supporting over a couple of dozen of HEIs that adopted the model of liberal arts higher education model in the MENA region over the past decade or two. The focus is on emerging adulthood as an especially dynamic time of reorganization and development of the brain that both influences and is influenced by the undergraduate experience. Accordingly, an educational agenda should include, in addition to its learning content, the elements of the overall education system in order to acquire the necessary survival skills in a highly competitive world. Among these skills are those required by the practical side of cultural diplomacy, in particular those related to career and life, where flexibility and adaptability, initiative and self-direction, social and cross-cultural interaction, productivity and accountability, as well as leadership and responsibility are included. Furthermore, service to one's community is an activity that instills in learners a sense of responsibility and enhances their positive attitude towards humans, particularly to the needs and concerns of their compatriots. In Lebanon, during my term as Minister of Education and Higher Education, I issued a decree for the first time that requires secondary school students to complete a total of 60 community service hours over a 3-year period from grades 10 to 12 which, if you multiply by the number of secondary students, amounts to almost 1 million hours per year of community service. So if they just planted trees, Lebanon would go back to 90% green, which was the case 100 years ago. Today, it's less than 10%. Finally, university life for students is essential for molding the learner's personality and the stability of their ideas and convictions. During this phase, human relationships take a special dimension. In particular, if learners have the chance to widen the spectrum of their relationships beyond their local environment. Different models of cultural diplomacy have been practiced throughout history by individual, community, state, or institutional players in order to facilitate and improve relations between distinct cultures. It is this goal that explains why a diverse student body is so important for HEIs. So much so that it is adopted as a pillar in the strategic plans of many universities. So when you're in a university with 100 different nationalities, or 60 or 70 nationalities, it's like you're visiting 70 different countries, learning about 70 different cultures, while you're still in that same geographic location. So diversity is extremely important and benefits everybody. In conclusion, soft diplomacy is a heading under which many objectives can be achieved. These objectives cannot be reached if efforts are not federated in different areas like politics, media, culture, labor, social affairs, education, and others. All of these require policies that should be worked out on the national, regional, and international levels. In this regard, education has the greatest impact on future generations, as it addresses the individual from childhood to youth and adulthood. Education can play an important role in establishing the concepts which cultural diplomacy and the 21st century skills aim at. It can also actively contribute to the transformation of these concepts into life practices to constitute a major aspect of the intellectual structure of the young learner, whose reality can subsequently be seen in the human personality of the rational adult. Teaching cultural diplomacy also involves developing students' mental capacities, including their ability to distinguish facts from opinions. How much is that needed in our world today, to distinguish facts from opinions? Be creative and critical, appreciate diversity, believe in equality, and embrace others. Accordingly, educating students in cultural diplomacy should not only provide pedagogical instruction, but also influence attitudinal reform. It should connect language, culture, and moral values to reshape the learner's identity, encourage free thinking and responsible citizenship, thus facilitating social unity as well as preparing new generations for social, political, and economic development of their countries. I am certain that the solution to most of our economic, unemployment, social, financial, and even political challenges lies to a large degree in education. Our educational systems should graduate agents of change in our societies that are not only work-ready, but world-ready. We have to instill in our graduates the fact that the function of leaders is to build more leaders, not followers, something that our region is in dire need of. I have no doubt that the wealth of any country is not in its natural resources, but in our youth, which represent the future. It is therefore our responsibility and duty to provide the best educational systems for them. We need to address the fundamental questions that improve the way we train and educate our youth. Graduates should be equipped with the necessary analysis, synthesis, and research tools in order to find innovative answers to challenges and situations they will probably face for the first time in their professional careers. This should be at the highest priority of any nation's strategic plan. Education is about triggering the minds of youth to think differently and find innovative solutions to improve our world and humanity. Transformation of education is the enabler of change in our social systems, not only with respect to technology, but also to produce global citizens that promote multicultural and multi-religious tolerance, which perhaps is one of the many parameters that will influence the future of our world. The world is experiencing a transformation due to the collapse of the hegemony system and global polarization. The emergence of a global century centered at multilateral cooperation and soft diplomacy will lead to transformed global systems, whether at the political, economic, trade, financial, monetary, defense, or foreign policy, as well as social levels, among others. If there is to be a global power race, it should be for moral superiority and not military supremacy. Global powers that instill standards of human rights, fighting racism, freedom, democracy, and the rights of people to self-determination, rather than adopt policies that pave the way for double standards pertaining to conflicts across the globe. Global powers should aspire to be a great country rather than a great power. During my lifetime, I have lived through many wars. However, I believe that if there must be a war, it should be against exclusion, against lack of dignity, and against human degradation, unfortunately, of which we are oftentimes passive eyewitnesses. Thank you. Otherwise, you don't pass the course.
Thank you, Dr. Diab, for this analysis, which in fact also amounts to theory of international relations in its own right. You explained to us also initially the soft power dimension of cultural diplomacy, and you demonstrated how one can make good use of cultural diplomacy in the educational system. What I consider is particularly important is your emphasis on diversity. And this is, by the way, the experience all of us who are teaching at the Academy of Cultural Diplomacy has made, how much it strengthens also and improves one's critical thinking when there is a debate among people with backgrounds from, as I have experienced in my own courses here, around 3 dozen countries, cultural identities, and so on. And so we now have time for questions and remarks from the floor. And according to what you suggest, there should be two, that we should allow 2 questions for each of the participants. Please, I see a hand raised here. Just, yeah. And after that, yeah. Please.
So in order to pass the course, I must ask you my second question.
No problem.
But no, on a serious note, because of its history, we know Lebanon has a rather unique political system wherein the president is always a man.
I'm not sure unique is the best way to describe it, but never mind.
I agree, but the president is always a Maronite Christian, the prime minister is always a Sunni, and a speaker, I think, is always a Shia. Do you think...
Any suggestions to change that? Or?
Maybe I'm looking for suggestions from you. But the question, I have 2 questions. Do you think this system has worked effectively in reducing the sectarianism that we have?
Yeah.
That is the first question. And the second question is, do you think that it limits the political mobility of an individual to one's own religion or sect, and in a way is a bit at odds with the true essence of a democracy and gives rise to more sectarianism in reality?
Right. Thank you. So, first of all, so that students know, this is not part of our constitution. The fact that the president is a Maronite, that the prime minister is Sunni, and that the speaker of the house is Shia. This is not part of the constitution. The constitution doesn't say that. It is, like many things in Lebanon, practiced. It is the norm. It is accepted. It is an unwritten agreement between, yeah. Exactly, yeah. So I don't think it would have made any difference if the Maronite was the prime minister or the speaker of the house, or it's not about that. I'm strongly for the concept of sharing in governance in Lebanon. So whether the Christians, I don't like the numbers game, but whether the Christians are 50% or 5% of the country population-wise, and my strong belief is that they should jointly govern with everybody else. This is what gives Lebanon a distinct flavor, different than everybody else. So the problem is not the sectarianism. I mean, if you go back to religion, it's all the same. I mean, there's no conflict, or with the sects. The conflict is when you mix religion with politics. And when politicians misuse religion, exploit sectarianism for their own political agenda. This is what's happening, not just in Lebanon, in other places as well. So I think it has to do with the way we organize our political parties, for example. You go back at to look at the way you can set up a political party. It's flawed, you know, and the proof is that almost except for two political parties, which many don't want to be part of, all the rest are sectarian political parties. So this one is Sunni, this one is Shiite, this one is Maronite, this one is Rum Orthodox, this one is I don't know what, yeah? And that's our first mistake. We have not managed to construct an effective law for setting up political parties. I mean, I'm not in any political party, but I'm not against political parties. It's just that it's not working in Lebanon the way it is. So something has to be, you know, a new law for setting up political parties that has, you know, people across the board, not just religious-wise, ethnicities-wise, geographic-wise. A lot of the political parties are located in the north, or in the south, or in the Beqa, or in Beirut, you know. Very few are across the reasons why we have problems is not because the president is Maronite. It's because of the political makeup. I mean, the political arena in Lebanon is truly unique, as you mentioned, in so many ways. And it can be a beautiful scene, except it's exploited for personal agendas. Personal meaning personal, meaning for the political party, meaning for the geographic area, meaning for the sect. And the last thing on the agenda is for Lebanon, the national dimension. It's the truth. I mean, we have to say the truth. This is the truth. Not every political party, but almost most of the political parties. So what was your other question?
No, I think you answered all.
I did? Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
There was another one from the lady, please.
Hi, I'm Kiani from US. I work in education. I have a little, not a question, but a statement. For your diversity aspect is a bit too idolized, in my opinion. Working with youth and teens in China, Japan, and US, kids and teens will automatically group themselves to people who are like them versus getting to know 70 different countries in one place. Is that your opinion, like practically versus theory, is that a difference?
I think that's a great idea. In fact, when I was Minister of Education, in Lebanon, it's a ministry. Other countries, it's 2 or 3 ministries. In Lebanon, the ministry combines K-12 education, higher education, and VTE, vocational and technical education. There used to be 3 ministries, actually, in Lebanon before. So I've always been given difficult tasks, so that was one of them. So anyway, I think it's a great idea. And I remember when I was minister, I signed a lot of agreements with European countries, England, France, Armenia, other countries, the States, the US, to allow students, public school students in Lebanon, public school students in other countries, to work together over the internet, virtual projects, meetings, and so on. And I personally found this very conducive. Students benefit a lot. As I said, diversity is extremely important. I mean, I personally learned from working in an institution such as the American University of Beirut for 33 years, about cultures, about ethnicities, about way of living, way of eating, way of dying, way of marrying, everything. I learned about cultures because we had something like 90 different nationalities of student body. Much more than I've learned visiting 80 countries. So yes, I think it's a source of enrichment for students and for faculty, by the way, as well. So I'm very much in support of this, yeah.
I worked in summer camp in Beijing. We had kids with the embassy.
Yeah.
Automatically only hang with kids from their embassy.
Yeah.
Never really interact until we put them into the classroom.
Yeah, I mean, when my children were at school, they were at the American Community School in Beirut. Every opportunity for them to travel for sports competition or science project or whatever, I automatically said yes. And they used to come back transformed. They learn a lot. It's like they siphon the culture from wherever they go.
Please.
Thank you. Thank you, former Prime Minister Lebanon. I have two questions. First, from my colleague who was a student here, but he couldn't make it. He's from Lebanon due to he's not still here in Berlin. So this question was, what advice do you give to the new parliament members that are from the independent movement to navigate the sectarian nature of the parliament? The second question would be, it's a little bit longer, just in the introduction. So we have the West-East Divan. It's an orchestra which was initiated by Professor Edward Said and the maestro Daniel, which brought in musicians from Israel and also from Lebanon, from Palestine, together in Spain to do an orchestra, and for there they kind of initiated music, of course, and they had that kind of engagement and dialogue. So do you think, especially now that we are coming, let's say the MENA is, a lot of countries are doing peace with Israel, do you think the education systems in the Middle East should initiate some kind of cultural initiatives like what Maestro Daniel and Professor Edward Said have done previously, so that we can create this dialogue, and probably the people who are from Israel will go back maybe to the government and become maybe leaders there that can change the kind of, let's say, political government perspective? Thank you.
So thank you, Baha. I will start with your latter question. I mean, I have immense respect for Edward Said and a lot of these top thinkers. However, you have to deal with facts. The fact is, Lebanon right now, regardless of whether anybody likes it or not, you could be pro or against, regardless. Today, the fact is that Lebanon is in a state of war with Israel, right? This is a fact, okay? Until the parliament, the Lebanese parliament and the Lebanese government say otherwise, this is the state we're in, okay? Because of a million reasons, because we believe in return of Palestinians to Palestine, because some of our land is occupied by Israelis, because, regardless. But the fact is, constitutionally, the country is in a state of war with Israel, yeah? So I'm completely in support of these activities, but there are these limitations. I mean, it's not easy. You cannot act as if there's nothing there. So these are some of the difficult questions you are asking, and I cannot answer these. I mean, I'm a very open person. I'm a very, I've learned in life that, you have to listen. You have to learn. People keep learning until the last moment of their life. I mean, so I'm very much for that. I'm against arrogance and setting in your own way of thinking, your own thoughts. In fact, if you want to improve in life, if you want to be more knowledgeable, more everything, you have to positively interact with the other that you think is very different. But here it's different. Here, specifically, the other is in a state of war with you. I mean, how would you deal with that if there are two European countries that have the same status? Would they do that? I doubt that very much. So if you remember, I'm going to have to say that because you asked the question. If you remember when King Abdullah came to Beirut in 2002, I think, he was crown prince at the time. And the King Abdullah Accord said the 22 Arab countries were willing to sign for a two-state solution. 1967 borders. The Israelis refused to even talk about it. So, I mean, you cannot take my house, kick my family out, and then say, let's play music together. It doesn't work.
Don't step on my foot.
And don't step on my foot. My foot is hurting for 80 years. I don't know if it's still 4 toes or 5 toes or 14 toes. So it's easier said than done. But I'm a big proponent of accepting the other, of understanding the other. But here it's different. There's a state of war, and I hope that this ends at some point. But this is the state of the fact right now. As to the other question of your colleague regarding the 13 new MPs, we have yet to wait and see if they are independent or not. If you recall, I don't know if you recall, but if you go back to my speech of accepting becoming the designate prime minister in December 2019, I went up and said, remember the revolution was in October 2019, and then it dwindled in November. So here I am as an independent, and I only knew about the fact that they wanted me 3 days before I don't think this happened in the history of Lebanon. Usually you don't only fight for it, which I never did, but you're aware of it months before, at least the potential of, my name was mentioned from 2015 several times because I was a clean-handed minister and people liked me and so on, but I never thought, I'm not even interested. I'm a professor, for God's sake. So my speech said, I am completely with the revolution and I am going to adopt your requests for a new cabinet. I was about to start forming a new cabinet. And I told them, the ministers, if the political parties and the parliament does not approve, I will apologize. So my cabinet is going to have the following framework, in line with what you're saying on the streets. Number one, no partisans, nobody belonging to any political party. There was 0 out of my ministers. None of them are politicians. Politicians in the true sense of the word, the way that the Lebanese understand politicians. So you don't have to be in a political party, but you could be a politician. Number 3, all experts in the subject matter. They are all PhDs, master's holders, 20, 30 years experience, and so on. A third of them, ladies, for the first time in the history of Lebanon. This will never repeat. When you're 50, remember the sentence that I'm mentioning now. Your 20s, right? In 30 years' time. So remember that the PM Diab said, this will never repeat. It will never repeat. A third of my cabinet, which was a small cabinet of 20, 30, there was a lot of unneeded ministers. Wuzara Dawli, 6 ministers of state. What for? They do nothing. Yeah? So here we have a 20-minister cabinet. 6 of them, that's 30%, are women. And a lot of them, all of them, for the first time. The first deputy prime minister a lady deputy in the region, not just in Lebanon. The first minister of defense in the region, not just in Lebanon, and the same for the others. And also, the fact that none of them, they also didn't want anybody from the previous cabinet. A lot of political parties wanted their, and a small cabinet. So all of these, and it wasn't easy to do that. And this was done in 33 days. Remember, the cabinet after me took 13 months. 13 months. So, and this cabinet turned out to be, in my humble opinion, the closest thing to the specification of a technocrat cabinet in the history of Lebanon. What happened later? Everybody turned against it because I was fighting corruption. Regarding the 13 MPs that you mentioned, I have full respect for them, but we have yet to see whether... I'm not interested in Sha'bawiyya. Sha'bawiyya means, what's Sha'bawiyya in English? Popularism. everybody wants to stand on TV, except for me. I don't go on TV because I don't trust the media there, unfortunately. This is being recorded now, but it's going to cause problems for me. But
It's live.
it's live, thank you. And this is my colleague from Hungary. Her name is... So it's about popularism. It's not about real issues that... and you know why? Because every one of them wants something. And in that same speech I gave on 19 December 2019, one of the ladies, I think it was Linda Mishlip of NBN, mentioned, why are you so strong? Why, how come you're... I said, I feel I'm strong because I want nothing for myself. Nobody can squeeze me into anything. Does this same sentence apply to all the MPs? If yes, that would be great.
And there is one more question from, we have, let me just now count. The gentleman from Afghanistan here, and there are two more questions here. So in the order I got this.
Thank you very much. My name is Nematullah Moment. I'm from Afghanistan. Keeping in mind the lecture about the soft power diplomacy.
Your president is a graduate of AUB, by the way. President of Afghanistan is a graduate of AUB, American University of Beirut. X, sorry, X.
Well, keeping in mind the education you got, you gave us about the soft power diplomacy and culture diplomacy. So what is your idea about the raising power in the world, in the new political blocks which are created in the world, and use of the hard power? So don't you think that today the soft power in culture diplomacy is losing its shine the way you taught us that it should get more? And also the restriction which are mostly put by the Western world on the elements of culture diplomacy, like on the sport diplomacy, music, arts. Don't you think that this is going to create more problem for the development of the soft power or in overall the culture diplomacy?
What will create more problems? Music and art?
Like the new restrictions, for example,
Yeah.
diplomacy
Yeah.
elements, especially on the sport, on the artists, on the music, beyond the borders.
So who's making those restrictions?
Most of the countries are making restrictions, even like sports, for example, football. I mean, like, I would say, like...
This is recent because of Ukraine. You're talking about Ukraine because of...
India, Pakistan...
yes.
Other countries.
Yeah.
Who's raising power, even they are putting...
So they're not only restricting sports, they're restricting everything. Yeah, you're right, yeah. So in answer to your question, yes, I mean, there are these restrictions that are historical or that emerged due to different reasons. Ukraine, more recent example. Yes, that is counterproductive to soft diplomacy. But what I meant about polarized global power is that it doesn't work to have one policeman for the whole world. It doesn't work. History proved it doesn't work. I mean, you had, powers that took over for 100, 200, 300 years, and they failed at the end. Coercive diplomacy doesn't work. It's not something that can propagate for a long time. So a multipolar world, in my opinion, is a much safer world for me as a human citizen, not as a Middle Eastern, as a human citizen. So it creates a balance. And the reason for that is because you have diversity. You don't have one end that has certain ideology regarding all issues. You have different people, different nations, different ideologies, all of which merge together to address a certain issue in the world. I don't think the global power is polarized. Global power is going to work anymore. It's disappearing anyway, slowly. It's to the advantage of the whole globe to have multiple powers govern. This is why I meant by might is not right. Right is might. I mean, meaning being right is what creates your power. not being strong and have a strong army and nuclear weapons. It doesn't work, and the history proved it doesn't work. I mean, you will win for 10 years, 100 years, 150 years, but it's not durable when measured by, a history of humanity.
So we have got time for the 3 final short questions. The gentleman here, and after that we have 2.
I'm from the Maldives and
I can't hear you.
I'm Ibrahim from Maldives and I'm a student here in ICT.
From where, sorry?
From the Maldives.
Maltese, okay.
And I'm a student here in ICT. You have already talked about the Lebanese sectarianism in its politics, and it's very sex-oriented in its politics, and you have briefly talked about that. My question is how you think the Lebanese identity should be built, considering that Lebanese identity is fairly recent, and all this happened in Europe in 18th century from Westphalia, the conference, and after that European built nation states. And considering this, Lebanon is a very recent creation. It needs an identity, and today it's you have a lot of sects.
Lebanon is thousands of years old.
I mean, it's a nation state.
As a state, okay.
And the politics is very sectarianism rules the politics. And how you think the Lebanese nation should be built? We have some example from U.S. which is built on creedal values rather than a race. Which believes republicanism and liberty of everything. They believe we have values. Everyone who believes the value is an American. So how you think the Lebanese identity?
So, yeah, okay, good question. I mean, as I mentioned, the problem is not the religious or the sectarian map in Lebanon. I think this is a source of enrichment, not a source of problems if properly, used. Unfortunately, I mean, let's talk about the rudimentary stuff, which is actually important. When you, the cabinet, the government, always is the entity, since it represents everybody politically, hopefully, and everybody sectarianism-wise. The government appoints director generals, appoints the high-level positions, which are all sectarian coded. Yeah. If this appointment was based on true credentials, not how you belong and who you belong to. Meaning, if we choose the best of the best, and there are top people in all sects, in all religions, if we choose the top of the top that have the national dimension as their priority, not the religious sect or the political party, the national dimension as their priority. So sometimes you might have to make a decision that is best for the country, but not necessarily best for your sect or your area where you live or your political party. Or you understand what I mean? If we do that, then Lebanon would be in a great shape. We Lebanese are innovators, and the proof is that wherever they go, they are the top of the top. In Africa, they are all businessmen, and we built half of the GCC. In Brazil, they reach presidency. Everywhere in the world, they're innovators, they're entrepreneurs, they're leaders, because they understand other cultures, because they are open to change, because they are open to debate. When you mix them with religion and sects, and when they come back to Beirut, they're a different person. Schizophrenia. Completely different person. So this is the problem. Of course, things have to work together. As I mentioned before, you have to change the law of how to establish political parties to make it, spread breadth-wise. Not, in my opinion, there shouldn't be political parties of one sect. There should be political parties with a minimum percentage of women, of geographic spread, of sects, of whatever, to have diversity. How can you build your ideologies as a political party if you don't have diversity? you will look at this from this angle. That's all you will see. But this has different views from different angles. So it's about many things, not just the fact that you belong to a sect. To me, this is a source of enrichment. I personally am a Muslim. I lived in a Christian area. And I think that is one of the reasons that made me open up to the other. Yeah. The same for many Christians living in a place like Tripoli, for example, which is in principle a Muslim area. They're different. So this is why I stress education. This is why I address soft and cultural diplomacy skills. This is why I think what ICD is doing is essential and important. Look at you. I mean, you're a student, 150, 200 students from, 50 countries. Students now, you come from 10 nationalities, I don't know. Would it be the same if you're all British or German or whatever? It's not the same. You sit together, you talk on any topic, and you have different ideas. That's a source of enrichment. It does not mean you're right, but I listen to you. I may take 10% of what you say. It's a source of enrichment. I'm being enriched by views and perspectives of people that come from different nationalities, different religions, different sects, different beliefs, different anything. Yeah. So the Lebanese have to use this source of enrichment to their benefit, not to their detriment. To their benefit, where 90% of the Lebanese society will benefit, rather than 9 people of the Lebanese society will benefit on the other side. It's not an easy thing to do, but I don't think the Lebanese society have reached that point yet. I don't think we've had a true revolution in the true sense of the revolution. Otherwise, why aren't they on the streets today? I was killing myself for the bread, you know, ربطة خبز. شو بيقولوا ربطة خبز? Bag of bread. Yeah, which is, bag of bread, which is the food for the poor. You know, I was killing myself for that bag at the time when I was prime minister, not to go from 1,500 liras to 1,600 liras, 100 liras more. I was killing myself to avoid this happening for the poor. Today it's 30,000 liras, going to 40,000 liras. Nobody cares. You look at the queues now, 3 hours of queues to buy a piece of bread. I don't know if you look at the news, but this is talk of the day these days. So democracy is not on paper; it's in the heart and it's in the practice. Yeah, and I'm not saying there aren't a good percentage of Lebanese that are like that, but no, not 100%. And the proof is in the parliamentary elections that took place 2 months ago. Why generate only 13 independents? Why not 130, 128, which is the size of the parliament? Because they didn't talk to each other. It's a long road. Yeah.
So we have got time for 2 final questions, please. And after that, Dr. Babu.
Thank you, Dr. Diab, for the insightful lecture you just given. I'm a Nigerian, and my name is Rose Denanja. I'm a public school teacher. I reside in the US. And the question I have has to do with the security problems we are facing currently in Nigeria. For the past 7 years, we've had a lot of killings by the Fulani headsmen within Nigeria. And lately, we have more of the Fulani headsmen coming in from the Niger Republic into Nigeria. And they have more sophisticated weapons than the military, and the police in our country. So the general belief is that the current government is in support of this. They are allowing it because all efforts, we've used the soft power, to try to bring an end to this. We've had delegates from different churches, religious groups, We've also had tribal heads from all over Nigeria trying to appeal to the government to do something about it. So my question is, since the use of soft diplomacy has failed, what can we as Nigerians do to move forward and to bring back the country to being a safe place for everybody?
Well, thank you for the question. The simple answer to this is to educate the masses in soft diplomacy, to educate the masses in the importance not just of the hard skills, the depth in the subject matter expertise, but also in the breadth, what I refer to as general education, which everybody has to take. So usually you look at universities, for example, that have 3-year programs starting from sophomore. You'll find that something like 33 credits out of 90 credits, that's more than a third of the credits, are general education, the soft skills that I'm talking about, which included in which are soft diplomacy skills. So the answer to this is to create generations that understand soft diplomacy and that have these soft skills, that are open, all what I mentioned, that have the acceptance and openness to other societies, nationalities, religions, whatever that other is. Because the people that are killing are not professors at university. They are people that are uneducated, obviously. So if these people are educated and are able to benefit from this education, not just to create a job, but to, as I mentioned, to become a leader in your community, country, society, region, whatever it is. We need to create this layer of these generations that understand that, and that will, by default, will move away from extremism. Extremism is wrong regardless of what it is, whether it's religious extremism, Muslim, Christian, Buddha, whatever, or it's extremism in any other aspect, I think is very bad, because extremism closes the door of communication, of dialogue with the other. And I was very sad to hear, because I attended the opening, the launching of Keynote in Vienna. Anybody from Vienna here? Yes, we talked about that. I'm talking about students. So Keynote is the King Abdullah Institute for Intercultural and Interreligious Dialogue. And that was supported by the Vatican, by Spain, the King of Spain, by, of course, covered by Saudi Arabia, the CAS, and so on. It was an amazing initiative. And when I attended in 2013 the launching of that in Vienna, there were people from all the globe, Japanese, Buddhist. It's an amazing mix. You learn immense things from such gatherings. Today I hear that this is no longer the case, and that the rising rightist way of thinking in Europe is becoming more and more dominating, which is very sad. So it's not just in Nigeria, it's everywhere for different reasons. And this is why I keep saying that education is the solution. And education is not, of course, you mold the personality at the bachelor level. That's between 18 and 21 age. But no, this has to also be integrated one way or the other in K-12 and in other forms of education. You have vocational technical education, you have lifelong learning, you have continuing education, parents' education. In a lot of countries, the problem are the parents rather than the young generation. So I believe that we should facilitate the best education for youth, and that youth should take over. I would be very happy if youth in Lebanon, when I say youth, I'm talking about under 40, take over the cabinet, take over the parliament, because even if there are problems in the way of thinking, it's minimal compared to people that are in their 60s, 70s, 80s. 90s in some cases that are instilled in their way of thinking. Yeah.
Very quick comments. It's not a questions. I really envy people who could ask long questions. Yeah, I can do that. One negative, one positive. A positive one that I'd add for the troubles of Lebanon that we have another 500,000 Palestinian refugees in Lebanon as well. Add to the problems of Lebanon. And we have 12 refugee camps, 12 wahdat. Imagine the massive catastrophe of the Palestinians.
12? Much more. 12 in Lebanon?
Camps,
I think they're more.
I've just Googled it.
Yeah, no, it's more. I think Google is not counting properly.
Anyway, so even the Palestinians in Jordan, they have the Palestinian citizenship, the Jordanian citizenship. They are fully Jordanian somehow, equal. But in Lebanon, no. My daughter-in-law still has ID written by hand. Let's say passé. So the problems of Lebanon, the other, allow me to disagree that problems of Lebanon, I can't blame the people. They are the most highly.
No, I didn't blame the people.
Or the structure
Please,
of the people.
we're recording. I didn't blame the people. I said the problem is not in sectarianism or different religions. It's the way the religion is used in politics.
I think it's the external ties.
Oh yeah. Yeah, sure. This is the upper layer. I'm talking about Lebanon inside. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. Yeah.
With this, we conclude that part of the session. I thank His Excellency Dr. Hassan Diab for the many insights
Thank you.
he shared with us into the functioning of politics, domestically as well as internationally, and for the alternatives he has explained or has described how one should continue. And we will now proceed with the final part of the
Thank you.